Hey everyone, welcome. Welcome you guys. So this is a combination of everyone that is doing something outdoors to bring freedom and restoration to women and children around the world. So you're using your love for the outdoors to bring freedom. So it's so cool. We have hikers, we have some climbers on here, we have some marathon runners. So fun that we all get to collectively come together in one big group. These calls are always so energizing and so encouraging. And I'm really thankful that you guys just took the time out of your evening to be part of this. And I'm gonna turn it over in just a minute to first Jeremy. But before that, I just want to celebrate a few things with you guys. And you guys all know what to do with our celebration because you're all on mute. But then I might unmute everybody because I like to hear a big whoop whoop from everybody. So here we go. To date, this crew of people has raised $70,000 just this year. Yeah! So good, you guys, so good. And you guys are part of an even bigger community of freedom fighters that have collectively raised $111,000 in $111,000 this year. So that's huge, you guys. You are part of a massive movement, and Rescue Freedom could not do what we do without you. So I wanted to celebrate that with you. Just in the outdoor arena, there are 200 freedom fighters that are using the outdoors and adventure as a tool to bring freedom and restoration around the globe. And that is part of the greater community of 250 freedom fighters. So I'm gonna unmute because I want to hear what everybody thinks about that. Yay! Yay! Oh, freedom!
Love it.
So good. All right, I'm muting again. Okay. So thankful for you guys. So with that, on that celebratory note, I'm going to turn you over to Rescue Freedom founder and CEO, Jeremy. And if you guys want to do the speaker view, if you don't want to look at all the thumbnails, you can go to your top right corner of your screen and it says speaker view, and that will change it out of the gallery view so you can just look at Jeremy as he communicates to us. So Jeremy, welcome. So happy to have you.
Hey, thanks. And I think probably the gallery view is more interesting than a giant close-up of my face. So I won't be offended if you want to keep it in gallery view. This is amazing. This is so fun. I'm so excited to get to connect. I wish I had a chance to hear each and every one of your stories and where you're from and what you're up to this summer and how you got engaged. This whole idea of being a freedom fighter is something that's super close to my heart because this is how the whole thing started. And so I wanted to share just kind of a brief snapshot. And if my eyes are bouncing around, it's because I'm looking at all these different thumbnails. But the whole freedom fighter concept is really near and dear to our hearts. And Dell, who you'll get a chance to connect with, Dell and I have been friends for 25 years. And Dell is actually the person who got me into mountain climbing many years ago. And so about 11 years ago now, I went on my first trip to India, and it wasn't, I kind of joke that at the time I wasn't married. Now I have 3 beautiful kids, a 6-year-old, 5-year-old, and 3-year-old. But 11 years ago, I was single and didn't have kids. So a friend of mine invited me to India, and I was in that era when you can just be spontaneous and jump on a plane if you have enough frequent flyer miles. So I was like, sure, let's go to India. And it had nothing to do with changing the world and more to do with loving to travel and culture and curry and naan bread. And so I was like, yeah, let's do it. Let's go to India. And I had no idea how that trip would change my life. And on the tail end of that trip, at the very end, had a chance to go and visit. He had some friends that were working in a place called Kamatapura, which at the time was the largest red light district in the world. They estimated there were about 50,000 women and children in sexual slavery in 11 square blocks in that part of India. And so for me, I'm a small town kid. I grew up in a town of about 3,500 people that was mostly dairy farms and loggers. And so trying to wrap my head around 50,000 women and children in sexual slavery in 11 square blocks. And then we drove through that area during peak business hours on a Friday night and just saw the women lining the streets and the men kind of marching down and then disappearing down these dark alleyways. And just something in me kind of broke that night. And honestly, my first reaction wasn't like, how do I help? It was like, this is so depressing. Like, I don't even know why I'm here. What do I do with this? And it wasn't until the next day when we got to go visit the kids that were rescued out of those brothels and out of that red light area. And I got to see kind of the hope in their eyes and the dreams that they had for a future. And I got to meet some high school age girls that were trying to go to college and trying to figure out how they were going to pay for college. I was like, okay, I have to be a part of this story. I have to be a part of helping these girls pursue their dreams and pursue their future. And so I came back and I told Del all about the trip. I was like, you would not believe what I saw and what I experienced, and shared about the trip with him, but really didn't know what to do about it. And was kind of back in Seattle here, working normal life, normal job, and just sort of had this thing stirring inside me. But that summer, Del and I had planned to take a few buddies up Mount Rainier. We had some buddies that knew that we were climbers and had been begging us to take them up Mount Rainier. If you're from this area, you know that Mount Rainier is kind of this big, massive mountain on the skyline that most people here grow up staring at. And it's sort of like this bucket list item that someday they want to climb the mountain. So we had told 6 friends that we would take them up the mountain on their first climb. And so we were kind of training for it that summer. And it just so happened that it worked out. We were going to be climbing on the 4th of July. And so we were going to be spending our Independence Day, the day that we celebrate our freedom as Americans, climbing this mountain. And so 2 weeks before we went, 14 days before the climb, I got a note from a friend that was doing a cancer marathon, like one of those Race for the Cure, join the team and you raise money. And I kind of just had this moment where I realized, oh, well, if you can run a marathon to raise money for cancer, why can't we climb Mount Rainier and raise money to fight human trafficking? And so I pitched the idea to Del and the rest of the guys, and they were like, sure, let's go for it. So we decided, since we were 14 days before the climb, we'd try to raise $14,410, which is $1 for every vertical foot of the mountain in 14 days. And what I didn't expect was that we would get the response that we did. So not only did we exceed that goal of raising that, I think we raised about 25 grand, but started getting contacts from people that are like, well, I heard about human trafficking. I want to know more. I want to be involved. How do I get involved? How do I get connected? And we had a media outlet that reached out, like, can we interview you about human trafficking? I was like, well, first of all, I don't know much about it. Second of all, I have no idea how you can get involved and how you can connect. But I know that it's a really important thing that we got to do something about. But then another interesting thing happened. The home that I had visited in India had no practical way, really. They didn't have a U.S. organization. And so we were trying to figure out, how do we get money to help those kids? They don't have an organization, so we can't get our friends to donate because they can't give tax receipts. And we were having a hard time finding an organization to work with. And I called a few organizations like, hey, we want to climb a mountain to raise money for you. And they're like, we don't do mountain climbs. Sorry. I'm like, no, you don't understand. Like, we're just going to do it and send you the money. And they're like, yeah, no, we don't do that kind of stuff. Like, really? Come on. Like, why is it so hard we just want to help. And so we were having a hard time finding places to help. And then some different anti-trafficking orgs that people were connecting me to a few of the ones we connected with ended up going bust. They had big intentions and big hearts, and the first few efforts that we were connected to and looked at ended up closing up shop. So here I am, this new person to the fight 11 years ago, and I'm like, okay, I can't find someone who wants to work with us, that wants to connect us to the issue. And a lot of the things I'm finding are really struggling. And these really well-intentioned people, both here in the States and around the world, that are setting out to help people, and then they close up shop. And that phenomenon we still see today. We just heard from an organization stateside that just shut down. And so started to realize, like, well, man, maybe there's a need out there to help these people on the front lines to actually sustain the work and to carry on the work to serve women and children. And so we did that climb. We had a bunch of other friends that were like, hey, we're in. When's the next climb? We're like, what do you mean the next climb? They're like, well, when's the next climb for captives? And initially we didn't have plans for a next climb. And so we did another one and it grew and we raised more money and we kept looking for more partners. And we're trying to figure out how to help advance this fight. And then after 4 years of doing that and connecting with dozens and dozens of organizations around the world, we felt like it was time to launch something that could kind of fill the needs that we were seeing. So 7.5 years ago, after several Climb for Captives and after trying to raise money for a bunch of different initiatives, we decided to launch Rescue Freedom. So we created Rescue Freedom, and the heartbeat of Rescue Freedom when we launched was we were seeing that all over the world, there were people in their communities who were literally giving their lives to rescue and restore women and children. They were dealing with death threats from mafias and from gangs and giving everything, mortgaging their houses to start safe homes and to start programs to help women and children. But most of them, they were highly underfunded. They didn't have a way to raise money in the US. They didn't have a huge support base. They were just people who saw women and children in slavery in their own towns and were like, we have to help. And so we thought, well, if we can find those people, if we can scour the globe to find the people who are already giving their lives to do this, and then if we can vet them and make sure they're doing it well and make sure they know what they're doing, and make sure they're trustworthy, if we can vet them and then bring them into kind of the Rescue Freedom family, and then not only support them, but actually start to bring the tools that they need, like access to a trauma therapist who can train them in how to deal with PTSD and all the extreme trauma that victims of human trafficking deal with. And if we can actually help resource them with program training and organizational support, and as you can imagine, most people that say, like, I'm going to give my life to rescue kids that live within 10 square miles of my house and I'll do whatever it takes. Most of those people, they don't start a safe home because they're passionate about budgets and bylaws and boards and, running these things. They're passionate about kids and about women and about bringing hope into the most exploitative places. But if they do that well, eventually they have to figure out, how do you have a budget and how do you get the right staff and how do you build the right infrastructure? And so Del, who you'll get to hear from, has worked with hundreds of nonprofits, has his master's degree in nonprofit leadership, has been a nonprofit consulting for many years. So when he came on full time to say, okay, how can we help these organizations not just be super compassionate and be the most amazing for kind of loving and supporting these women and children, but actually have the infrastructure they need to sustain themselves. So we started doing that, but from the beginning, because of our story, the Freedom Fighter model was built in from day one. And so this year, Del and I actually leave this weekend for the 11th Climb for Captives, the 11th anniversary of Climb for Captives. There's others on the call. There's several others. This year, there will be 3 or 4 different Climb for Captives happening around the country, in addition to all the different campaigns you guys are part of. So we're still freedom fighters. And for us, that really also baked into the heart of the DNA that, human trafficking is this unique issue that, because slavery is a man-made cause, like literally humans create and perpetuate slavery. Without people enslaving other people, our issue goes away. So it's not like, clean water or malaria where it's perpetuated by nature or by these other factors. It's like, this is literally a man-made cause. And therefore, the more people that become abolitionists, that we don't see our community of supporters as like, oh, those are the donors who donate so that we can go over here and do the real work. We are a community together, and the more of us that are abolitionists that say we will not participate in slavery, we will be a part of the solution, not part of the problem, that actually is part of actively solving slavery, because that means it's that many more people united that aren't participating, that are abolitionists, part of setting people free. And so this is a really critical part of our mission, that we see it as, we are freedom fighters with you. This is part of why we're here, is actually to do this kind of stuff, to give everybody a place to be an abolitionist, to participate in the fight, and to give us natural conversation points. Because that's one of the things we loved about Climb for Captives, is how many people in our community responded when we thought, like, oh, would you consider supporting us? And they're like, are you kidding? I've been wanting to be a part of this. I didn't know how, but like, I can be a part of it with you. That we want to create a place for everybody to have a role, to have a place as an abolitionist in the fight against slavery, because that's what it's going to take to end it. So that's kind of the crux and heartbeat. A few of you guys actually got to come with me to a wedding a few months ago. I got to go back to one of the places in India where this all began, for a young woman now, who was a bright-eyed, shy girl in high school when I met her, and now she's a college graduated with her degree in social work and was getting married. So Dell and I got to be there. A few others on this call were there for this wedding. Part of what made that so special was this was a girl who came from a family line where every female in the history of their family line that they can track was in prostitution. They come from a class, kind of a caste, and a part of this area where these women are basically seen as throwaway, and the mothers groom their daughters for prostitution because that's their only sort of retirement plan. The only way to exit prostitution is for your daughters to enter. And then, as you can imagine, there's only so long, typically the average life expectancy when someone enters a brothel is 6 to 7 years. And so these mothers, they have these daughters, and then they know the clock's ticking. There's only so long that they can profitably sell their bodies before they have to get out. And so they groom their daughters for prostitution so that then their daughters can take care of the mothers and pay for the mothers. And so this young woman who got married, her mother had the courage and the dream to risk it all, to risk her own future, to say, we're going to let our daughters out. And so her daughters, she got them into our local partner there. And these daughters thrived. They went to school, they succeeded, and the daughters ended up helping their mother escape. And so here we are at this wedding of these girls who are literally changing the future of their family tree. The first time in generations that they're not in prostitution. And the mother's there. But what was so amazing is the whole community of women in the brothels had really given the mother a hard time of like, we're not going to take care of you. Like, you just gave up your future. What do you think that we're going to provide for you after, like, you're on your own now. And the mother's sister actually owns a large brothel. And and she had been probably the most aggressive towards the mother, saying, I can't believe you did this. Like, and meanwhile, the sister's daughters, who are the cousins to these girls, are being groomed for the brothels. Well, they all came to this wedding. And so we're there, and there's this group that had come from the brothels, and they're at the wedding. And it's the first time that the aunt sees in person the power of this community and the hope and the life. And she sees this niece of hers who's now got a college degree and is getting married to the man of her dreams and is pursuing this life and is looking around just totally dumbfounded, and comes up to our local partner afterwards and says, you know what, I was wrong. And do you think there's hope for my daughters too? And so we're standing there as she says, I want to let my daughters out. I want my daughters to have what these girls have. And so we see the power of this generational slavery and bondage being broken, and these girls pursuing their dreams. And now that girl that's married, her and her husband are coming on staff at the boys' home in that city because she has her degree in social work. So they'll actually be leading the boys' home and helping these young boys coming out of the brothel to experience that same kind of freedom. So that's what it's all about. That's why we're here. That's what we're making possible. So we're so excited to have you guys on the team. So grateful for you, and so excited to be a freedom fighter with you. We'll be slogging it out up Mount Hood in 4 days, and thinking of all of you.
Jared, thanks for sharing the vision behind how this thing got started. And it's fun. I see so many of your names, and I know a lot of your stories about different things that you're doing, and to be able to put a face with your name and just spend a couple minutes with you tonight is really special for us. You're a key driver behind what we do, and the stories that Jared's telling are actually happening because of what you guys are doing. I want to take just a second. Jared did a great job of painting the picture of this is the vision of how we got started and why we're doing this and how it's all working. I want to connect a little bit of the dots. You might get questions from folks that you're inviting into the story on how does this all work, or what sets Rescue Freedom apart, this particular cause, what's unique about that. We see the fight against slavery, one of the lenses that we look at it as. It's kind of like when we were kids and you lined up a row of dominoes and you pushed the first one and that one knocked the second one down until it got to the end. And for us, that last domino would represent the abolition of slavery, ending that in our lifetime. And there's these different dominoes that need to fall for us to successfully see the end of slavery. And you may or may not know, but we live at an interesting point in history that slavery, human trafficking, modern day slavery, is more defeatable now than at any time than ever before. And there's a couple things that make that true, and they're really the falling of the first couple dominoes. One is that slavery is now illegal in every country in the world. It's never before been the case. You back up just a couple hundred years, and many countries around the world depended on slavery to keep their economy going. I think another reality that makes slavery more defeatable now than ever before is that it's more concentrated in just a few regions of the world. In fact, 70% of the slaves in the world today are in only 10 countries of the world. So it's isolated in many ways, and it's illegal. So, and those are really some of the first dominoes that need to fall. Rule of law, concentrating it into certain areas of the world. And we're seeing those things happen. And some of the other dominoes are actually where nonprofits do their best work. And that's where Rescue Freedom comes in, because we have one of our uniquenesses is that we have a holistic model. So we don't just go at this from the legal side or just the law enforcement side or just the restorative side or the preventive side. We actually believe that all of those dominoes need to fall in every region of the world to defeat slavery as it sits today. And that's why we attack on so many different fronts. It's a very strategic approach. For us, once those two, first couple of dominoes, a rule of law and isolating it, the next domino is prevention. And you might have people, it's like, what are some examples of what does Rescue Freedom do? Whatever I give, what's it going to do against this fight? Here's some of the keys that you want to maybe latch onto in terms of what we're working on right now. Prevention for us is really that next domino, and for us there's two prevention dominoes. One is we believe that targeting education for those that encounter traffic victims is one of the big keys. Last year we trained 137,000 professionals around the world, people who actually encounter most frequently trafficking victims. So for us it'd be law enforcement, it'd be medical professionals, it'd be those in the hospitality and travel industry. Those are the folks that, if they're trained, they actually have this unique opportunity to dive in and to intercept at that moment and to get that traffic victim away from their trafficker. If they know what to do, if they're trained, it can happen. In fact, I just saw an interview with somebody, she's an airline worker. She was trained in how to do this, and realized that she had a traffic victim on board with her trafficker. And when they landed at Heathrow, she had security lined up to take this girl off the plane separately and freed her. And that happens only through this targeted training. Another one of my favorite stories is one of the countries we work in is Romania. We're in 18 countries now, and we target Romania and Bulgaria because they're some of the poorest in Eastern Europe, and they're source countries where women and children are being trafficked from. And we were looking for what's a built-in group, a social network within that country, activists who could help us be the eyes and ears, kind of the watch group within every community. And interestingly enough, the Eastern Orthodox Church raised their hand and, would you train us? Would you train all of our people? Use your professional training and train us so that we can identify trafficking when it's happening, educate those that are being trafficked, and separate them from the traffickers. So now we have the Catholic Church, other churches are also raising up and saying, hey, actually, we have people in every village, in every community. We want that as well across Eastern Europe. So those are some of the cool things that are happening. We trained an additional 27,000 individuals in the first few months of this year, the first quarter. The other side of the prevention domino for us is going after the most vulnerable people. So every person that we prevent is someone that we don't have to rescue. And so we're working right now with 6,400 young girls that are in different prevention programs. And oftentimes what that would look like, for instance, in Cambodia or Thailand or Laos, young girls as young as 12, it will be their cultural obligation to work on behalf of the family, particularly if the family is very poor. And so coming alongside them and helping them with job skills at that young age and the opportunity for continued education gets them out of it, prevents them from falling into the ploys of these traffickers, because there's very few job skills that a 12-year-old has left to themselves. But if we can introduce those skills, it actually prevents them from going down that lane. So those are some of the important early dominoes. And then we move to outreach and intervention, going in and building relationship with people in the red light district. A lot of times people say, well, how do you rescue women and children out of prostitution and from exploitation? A lot of it happens through relationship. It's building relationship while they're in those exploitative situations. They begin to trust our teams, and it makes it possible for us to get them out, oftentimes working with law enforcement, but they'll actually stay out if we have a relationship with them ahead of time. And from there, we work towards that rescue domino. 570 individuals rescued last year. We're on pace to be doing about 12 a week right now. And so whenever you're out there running that extra mile, whatever it is, it's getting dark and you're still on the trail, whatever it is, maybe pull that little stat up and say what I'm doing, what I'm working towards right now is helping us get those next few girls out this next week, another 12. Right now, in terms of going on to like the restoration domino, that's kind of where it moves: prevention, intervention, rescue, restoration. On the restoration domino, right now we operate 37 safe homes, so residential safe homes around the world, and then an additional 22 non-residential safe homes. So as we speak right now, about 1,600 individuals in those programs daily that we're serving, and there's a lot of cost to that, but that's this revolving door of individuals that are coming in, they're graduating out, we're able to bring new ones in, and the reason why we're so big on that, all of these things intertwine. So whenever we hear from law enforcement, we often hear we would be so much more aggressive with rescue if we knew that there were beds to place those rescued individuals in. The only thing worse than slavery is to taste freedom and then to go back into slavery because there's no place for you in a safe home. And so working with law enforcement, we're seeing that we have to keep expanding. So out of our 24 partners right now, 17 were in construction last year to expand bed space, just so that we can continue to work at this same pace, rescue as many as we can, as often as we can, and have programming and space for them. So that's just a quick snapshot. A lot of the things that are going on. We oftentimes ask, what's the need? Like, what do you guys need right now? The funds that you guys are raising is immediately put to work into programs. We have donors that have specifically committed funds for our operational costs. And so whenever you raise funds, it goes 100% to programs. And that's a great piece to tell people when you're raising funds. Another thing is we keep a list of about $750,000 of need right now. So if someone just happened to say to you, hey, well, I just happen to have $750,000 laying around, could Rescue Freedom use that? The answer is yes, and we can give them a list within a couple minutes of exactly where that money would go. So we're always looking for what's that next piece, that next program, that next launch that'll help us move forward strategically to actually do more in the field. So there's always that need. This is, thanks again for letting us come. I love little moments like this. Our team is actually reading a book called Bury the Chains, and it's the story of the historic move to abolish slavery in the British Empire during the great transatlantic slave trade of the 1700s. And in that time and in that day, people thought it was inconceivable that slavery could be demolished. Because their whole economy centered around this whole thing called slavery, and they beat it in their lifetime. They actually beat it back, and it all started in a little meeting, actually on the south side of London at a print shop. It was a group of people, business people, there was church folk, there were some politicians, there was lawyers, and different people that came together, and they said, we've got to do something about this. This is wrong. Like, we have a heart to beat this back. And they saw it in their lifetime. And what's amazing is our team's looking at this, and a lot of volunteers are reading the book with us. And if you fast forward to us today, slavery has never been more defeatable in human history than it is today. And if they can do it, we can do it just as well. And it's our time. It's our turn. We have the shot to beat this thing back. And inspired by what you guys are doing, we're right in there with you. As Chair said, we leave on Sunday for our climb, doing what we love to fight what we hate. And so thanks for letting us spend a few minutes with you tonight, sharing a little bit about the vision behind this and kind of what we're doing and why it's working. Hopefully that's helpful and gives you a little bit of information to share with those that you're inviting into the story to fight injustice in our time.
I love it.
Yeah, Jeremy, go ahead.
Del, Yeah, thanks so much, Del. You guys can probably tell Del and I could just go for hours. You get us going, we get pretty fired up. So, but we're so excited. Laura, let me know. We were talking through questions you guys might have or things that come up as you're learning about the issue. One of the questions that Laura mentioned is that someone came across some statistics, kind of in the anti-trafficking space generally, about recidivism of stats about how many people that are rescued end up right back in. And if you've looked at that, you may have heard that in general, in the human trafficking space, that you'll see different stats, but unfortunately, in general, the majority of people who are quote unquote rescued end up back in the life. So some places you'll see that like 80% of people who are rescued end up back in prostitution. However, that is absolutely fundamentally not true with Rescue Freedom. And let me explain. So a lot of what happens around the world, the majority of rescue efforts is, if you think about victims of human trafficking, as the overwhelming majority of victims of human trafficking are the most vulnerable populations. And so while you do have situations, if any of you have seen Liam Neeson in the movie Trafficked, while you do have situations of like happy, healthy girl from suburban family who loves her and cares for her and whose dad might be a former CIA operative, gets kidnapped unwillingly and forced into the trade. Yes, that happens. That is by far the absolute smallest minority of trafficking incidents. Most of the time, traffickers aren't going to risk potentially kidnapping Liam Neeson's daughter, who knows how to find you and hunt you down and break your legs 3 ways and all of that. They're going to go after the people who are already vulnerable, the people that nobody cares if they get taken. Nobody cares if they go missing. So these are people who are already vulnerable and who have been pretty much failed by everybody in their life. They don't have parents who are fighting for them and advocating for them generally. Most of them don't have a dad in their life. They don't have a male figure who is going to fight for them and protect them like Liam Neeson. And so what ends up happening is a lot of people that get trafficked were betrayed by somebody they trusted, a family member, a mother, a father, an uncle, a husband, a boyfriend. They were betrayed by the person they trusted most. And we hear that time and time again, that somebody they trusted said, hey, I'm going to take you to this big city for a job, and then they were sold into a brothel. And so if the person you trusted the most in the world betrayed you and literally took you in the night you were sold into a brothel and attacked by countless men, that when some stranger shows up and kicks down the door of a brothel and is like, hey, guess what? I'm here to set you free. I'm going to take you to a wonderful place. Like, do you think you're going to believe them? And so what happens is, most people, if they're rescued in like a smash and grab raid and everybody they've ever trusted failed them, when a stranger shows up and says, I'm going to take you to this wonderful place and we're going to give you all these things that you've never even dreamed possible, those people have no interest in sticking around to find out what nightmare awaits around the corner. So they run at their first chance and they go back to what they know, because a known exploitation is better than an unknown exploitation. It's better they learn how to mitigate, they learn how to cope, and they're just too afraid of what's coming around the corner. So why the local partner model for us matters, and why it's the crux of what Rescue Freedom does, is having those on the ground in that community. Is the majority of what happens with our rescues is done in a highly relational context. So our local partners are embedded in the community. They're operating medical clinics and feeding programs and daycare shelters for the children of the women working in the red light district. And so over time, they're building that relationship, saying, hey, when you're ready, we have a future for you. We have hope for you. We can help. We can get your kids out. And they're there day in and day out. So a lot of times our rescues are actually the result of months or sometimes years of investment into relationship, into these areas where these women who they don't, most of the time, once they're broken and sort of surrender to the system, they're not actually kept in locked cages, because the traffickers know, look, they don't think they have hope. They have nowhere to go. It's too much work to try to lock them up and police them. Like, let's just break their will and break their spirit so they have no hope. And so they actually have a little bit of quote unquote freedom in terms of, if they need medical care, the traffickers are going to let them go to a clinic because they can't make money on somebody who's too sick to take clients. And so if we can be the medical clinic where they come, and then we can build that relationship, or a dental clinic or a feeding program, or they'll let the kids out and go stay in a daycare during the day because it's too much of a hassle to have all these kids running around the brothels. And so a lot of our rescues are actually the result of relationships. So by the time the women are coming out, they actually already trust us. They know that we'll be there for them. And so the last numbers I heard, Adele, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I haven't heard numbers yet for this year, but we track that pretty close, that we've been over a 90% success rate. In other words, over 90% of the women and children that get out of the brothels never go back to the brothels. And that also is about the fact that we're not just about getting them out, that if you don't give them something for a future, that they were trafficked and they don't have other job skills, they probably didn't finish their education. They need people that actually believe in and are willing to commit to a future, which means education, vocational training. So it's a combination of that relational element and then a long-term deep commitment to giving them the tools they need to succeed in life and to have a future. But it's been amazing to see. And that's something that, I get pretty excited about and I'm willing to brag about, because it is pretty uncommon to be that high, to be over 90% success rate. And it's really a testament to the sacrifice of our local partners who are really in the trenches every day, again, dealing with the mafias and the cartels and the traffickers, to build those relationships, to build that rapport, and then to do everything it takes to empower these women and children to a bright future.
So good. Thank you, Jeremy and Del. You guys, I'm going to unmute you. We just give a big shout and thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you guys so much.
Awesome. Thank you.
All right. Was that inspiring? Yeah? Pretty encouraging? I know. I could listen to that over and over again, because hope doesn't get old, right? Hope does not get old. When we can instill hope in people, when we can provide hope for people, when we can look at someone and be a light. I mean, you guys think about what you're bringing just in your everyday out there, spreading this hope. You're not only inspiring somebody to care about this problem, but you're inspiring somebody to have hope for themselves. So it's you're hope bringers. So I hope you guys grab onto that. And really, when Jeremy said we are a community of abolitionists, that is not something that he throws around lightly. It's true. You guys standing up for this is a huge deal. So thank you, thank you, thank you. We just recently had our Red Party over in Woodinville. It's a chance where we can pour into our supporters. You were all invited. Some of you were able to make it. The Florida people, you guys didn't fly in. I'm kind of like, what's that about? Just kidding. But we had that over in Woodinville, and it's just a chance to pour into the community of supporters and to say thank you. And the theme for the night was dreams. And what's super special is these survivors that are coming into the care of our local partners, they're not only being rescued, but they're given a chance to dream again. They're given a chance to be able to dream. And so I sent a few of our freedom fighters some quotes from real survivors, real dreams. They're in our care currently. And I wanted them to take a moment. I want to just share these dreams with you. There's 5 of them. And just take a moment to just let that sink in, because you guys are showing up for these women and children and saying, you can dream again. You can dream for a better future. You have hope again. Can we just imagine looking someone in the eye who has carried so much oppression their entire life and say, you get to dream again. So first person, Amber, would you unmute and share that dream?
All right. In prostitution for 6 years, I joined the program in April of 2018. I have 3 children, ages 8, 6, and 3. My dream is to have my own beauty salon after getting the required training and be an inspiration for other women who are in prostitution. I am determined to work hard to achieve my dream. Survivor of Ethiopia.
So good. New story, changed life. Bethany.
I am an 18-year-old unwed mother of a 2-month-old baby boy out of sexual abuse. I wish to open a beauty salon to become independent and raise my child with self-respect. Survivor, India.
So good. Summer.
I was rescued 3 years ago from a brothel when I had almost lost my hope. I saw hundreds of men in my previous life, and I never thought I would be able to trust a man ever again in my life. When I was in Bible college, I met a man who accepted and loved me with all my ugly past. Now I dream again about getting married and having a family. Survivor, age 19, India.
So good. Bree.
I was accepted to the University of Eswatini and want to pursue a career in the medical field. My dream is to become one of the first female cardiologists in Eswatini. Survivor, Swaziland.
Come on. Like I've read these dreams before, but I still, like, it still chokes me up. David, are you still on? If you're not, I'll read yours. Okay. I dream of completing my education and studying to become a midwife and to support my family. Survivor, Cambodia. These are real dreams, real lives that are being changed because you said, yeah, I can go on a crazy long hike and raise some money. I can go climb a mountain and raise some money. I can go run a marathon and raise some money. We're doing what we are physically able to do to bridge, to bring resource, to bring change to these lives. And as we close tonight, I just want you to take a moment and just close your eyes. Close your eyes, everybody. And take a step, perhaps into the country of Ethiopia, or into the country of India, Swaziland, Cambodia. Then you find yourself in the front of a building that you know is good. And you're invited in, and you walk in not knowing exactly what to expect, but you know there's hope there. This is one of the local partners, one of the restoration homes that you've been raising funds for, that you've been supporting, that you've been rallying for. And the person that invited you in takes you over to a young girl. And you guys meet for the first time. And she shares her dream with you. And you can honestly look her in the eye and say, I showed up for you. I stepped out for you. I did what I could for you. It's powerful. You guys can open your eyes. It's powerful. We can easily become disconnected, right? We can easily have the busyness of life and all the things that we have to accomplish. We can become easily disconnected from the thing that we're fighting for the person that we're fighting for. But as you press in, as you press into the hard, into the training, into the sacrificing your time, as you press in to the hard thing of posting and making that ask for the 10th millionth time, as you press in and you think, I want to give up, can I encourage you to pause, close your eyes and do that very thing that we just did. Because it'll bring you back to what you're fighting for. It's the one person, it's the one dream fulfilled. Yeah? So good, you guys. So thankful for you. Let's keep going, keep fighting the good fight. And I'm going to unmute us and we're going to give one big for freedom on 3. Okay? Ready? 1, 2, 3. You guys are amazing. I love you with all of my heart and just so thankful for your yes. For your continued showing up. So, I love that. Okay?
Hi, Sally.
Hi, Sally. Hi.